Thank you for the intro, Christy. Welcome to our webinar, Educator Resources for Teaching Game Design and Coding with GameMaker. I hope you all keep him safe and well. Today, we're going to look at the different methods of teaching GameMaker at different stages as students progress through their education. So to the agenda, we'll start with a brief overview of GameMaker and then look at the approaches to teaching game design, including feedback from our teachers following a survey we did in November 2020. We'll then look at the different approaches taken for different student age groups, and for each age group, we will move on to the challenges brought about by COVID and how to adjust for home learning. We'll look at our approach to licensing and privacy, including the licensing support we are providing to all schools during COVID, and then finish up with a Q&A and how to get your free license. Before we get to the educator resources, I'd like to provide a brief overview of GameMaker Studio 2. First developed in 1999 for use in education, it's an easy-to-use 2D game making tool. Being 2D is important for learning because it removes much of the complexity associated with 3D and allows for faster progress. Drag and drop, or as you may hear me refer to it as D&D, there's a drag and drop system for no-code development. So students firstly understand the fundamental building blocks and can progress to coding when they are ready, letting them progress seamlessly without hitting a wall. There's a custom language, GML, or GameMaker language. This JavaScript-like language is based on C and designed to be easy to use for game design and simple to pick up. GameMaker includes an image editor, sprite editor, object editor, and room editor. It also now includes the sequences animation tool. Free teacher resources that teach the fundamentals of coding and help students to build their own game step by step. We have a large active community with a forum and social media and beginner tips from pros. And big studio credibility. Students can see hundreds of real games with many multi-million sellers made with GameMaker. The link here takes you to our showcase with award-winning games. The current iPad game of the year was Hyperlight Drifter, made with GameMaker. And we have over 1,500 new users register every single day, with 90% of them being beginners. So while GameMaker is a professional tool, it is at the same time a foundation tool. So we sent out a questionnaire to our teachers at the start of November 2020. The responses are consistent with when we asked the same questions back in 2019, with planning, individual confidence, and learning engagement all scoring more than 75% when it comes to being rated somewhat effective or better. When we asked how effective are games design lessons at teaching the following, you can see the positive results on the slide. And one that's very interesting is definitely the student teacher bond that's floating around about 65%. I'm often asked what age group GameMaker is taught at. Today, we're going to look at the approaches taken broadly at ages 12 to 14, 15 to 16, and 17 plus. Here's broadly how teachers approach the teaching of game design from the survey of educators who use GameMaker. As you can see, the teaching of GameMaker is very hands-on, so it suits kinesthetic learners. This is probably why we hear that students who struggle to engage in other areas of the curriculum are much more motivated to engage with GameMaker game design lessons. I was recently talking to one of our teachers who provides alternative provision to children who have behavioral difficulties and who can't be accommodated in mainstream education. And he was saying the Space Bubbles video tutorial, which is part of the free educator materials, are at the right level for his students. There are three approaches to teaching that I'm going to cover in this presentation. Firstly, in blue, is make a game step by step using video. This is an approach that solely relies on video tutorials where users build and extend games from no knowledge using drag and drop and then progress into making games using GML. This is more appropriate in home learning situations, out of school camps and clubs where there's no formal framework needed for learning code. The students are learning the skills in a more hands-on way, so educators may need to provide some structure to what they learn afterwards using Educator classroom materials. This requires less educator input. Then, in orange, making a game step by step with the teacher leading, where the educator provides guidance on teaching of coding to fulfill a school curriculum, and this is reinforced with step-by-step tutorials. It comes with assessment structure and homework. This is the approach taken by our educator resources and will require the educator to run online tutorials to go through the slides. And in green, We have the approach of setting a project for students to interpret. This is generally the approach we see taken with those aged 15 to 16. This is actually the most popular approach and is used in more advanced curricula where students are required to show creativity and practical implementation of programming. For this approach, I will show you the resources that we can provide, guidance and inspiration. So this is how teachers evaluate the progress being made by students. Our free tutorials include fully documented teacher and peer evaluation criteria. Assessing progress can be a difficult part of home learning, and GameMaker enables easy sharing of games so educators can check on progress. In a previous survey, we got some great feedback from educators on how using game design has aided the education process at their school. The kids are happier in class. There aren't behavioral problems like in other classes. Games require creatives and tech teams to work together with a common goal to solve. While they build games, they also build friendships, learn to overcome hardships, and create something meaningful. My students very much enjoy the game design unit that I teach. Personally, I think games design is effective at improving problem solving, attention to detail, and teamwork. The students have learned to solve complex and abstract problems by themselves. The content provides a sufficient challenge and helps develop persistence and attention to detail. It has certainly enabled some students who are otherwise disengaged from the curriculum to re-engage. So what about the students? What do they get out of it and what do they enjoy the most? Definitely the end, where they finally tried their own game, even if it was the most simple game in the world. Learning to overcome challenges, excuse me, and have a working program. The students love to show their parents what they have made by themselves. They are very proud if they get their ideas done and improve their skills. The feeling of accomplishment when completing a game and watching others play the games that they have built. Just being able to create an original game, then watch their peers play the game is such a high for these kids. To be able to say, I made that is a real ego boost. Creating games, making rapid progress in a short span of time. Thinking up new games, brainstorming is normally a pain to get students to do, but not when it involves games design, and seeing their ideas take shape. So looking at different styles of teaching, at age 12 to 14, school curriculums are mainly focused on teaching students the fundamentals of coding and giving them engaging ways to enable them to put it into practice. And to this end, we created space bubbles for an education environment. This is a list of everything There is a list of everything included in the materials. Space Bubbles is a D&D project-based scheme of work where students work on one project over the course of 8 one-hour lessons, with 30 minutes being spent on learning coding and 30 minutes being spent on making the Space Bubbles game. Over those lessons, students are taught how to program by recreating their own version of the game Space Bubbles using video tutorials. Aimed at children aged 12 to 14, but can be used for older and younger, and developed by Terry Watts, who is a teacher and formerly a game designer. In a home learning environment, the lesson can be taught using Zoom and the students can progress using the video tutorials. They are able to export their games, submit their game for evaluation by the teacher, and complete their self-assessment forms. Each lesson has its own starter project, so if a student gets stuck, they can move on quickly. The curriculum topics covered include programming key concepts and principles, sequencing, selection statements and iteration, modeling the state and behavior of real-world problems and physical systems, excuse me, for example, making hot chocolate in the homeworks, and also contains teacher review, self-review, and peer review. Moving now to video tutorials, which don't require a teacher to lead. First, this is the first of our consumer tutorials, where students can learn on their own. The game is based on the classic Asteroids game for beginners, where many of the same mechanics as Space Bubbles. It covers both drag and drop and GameMaker language, so you can make the game in D&D and then remake it in GML. This is an official tutorial made by one of our community educators, Friendly Cosmonaut. So it's a different style of different teaching style and includes an intro to GameMaker. The focus of this is to retain engagement through quick wins. You create your ship and get it moving within a few minutes before layering on additional game mechanics. Space Mods builds on Space Rocks. It also has D&D and GML versions. This additional content can also support students who need to help with the Space Bubbles extension and challenge tasks. So it has power-ups, enemy ships, cameras, parallax and layered backgrounds for more depth and 3D perspective, and visual effects such as particles and screen shape. There's a nice comment here from a user who felt that they were able to start making their own modifications to the game once they completed space mods. Excuse me. Breakthrough is a brick breaker game. It's taught for both GML and D&D, so students have the opportunity to develop the game in both methods. Around half of all projects being worked on in GameMaker are in D&D, so there's no need to go to GML until you are ready. This is a totally different style of game, but the teaching is still at beginner level. FireJump is our latest tutorial. It is a drag and drop full game tutorial that introduces the basics of GameMaker's D&D system to create your own infinite platformer game. It comes as a 4-part tutorial series. Please check it out after the webinar. Click the link for more information, and on the site there is a link to play the web version of the game. From the age of 15 to 16, we see the school curriculum focusing more on the creative application of coding. With project-based tutorials, you can set a theme and see how your students interpret it. Based on a marking scheme, the scheme could look like the following. Interpretation of the theme, complexity or functionality used, playability, coding practices, and creativity. Here are some of the resources. Here are some resources for tools, artwork, and audio, etc., that can be used as a basis for game creation. The Global Game Jam resource at the bottom are particularly noteworthy as they run the world's largest game jam each year, which takes place over 3 days. We also have blog articles that can provide inspiration from our team and pro developers alike. These can fit in well with the Space Bubbles and Space Rocks tutorials. They cover a wide variety of topics from planning, creating game mechanics, how-tos, getting your game finished, and how to make your code neat, and much more. You'll never be short of inspiration and guides for how to do things on YouTube. Here's just a sample of games and tutorials that can be found easily on YouTube. All GameMaker Studio 2 features and settings are fully documented with examples in our online manual. One of the problems with home learning students aged 15 to 16 is that group learning and projects can be more difficult to achieve. To assist, we have official tools videos that are accessible through our YouTube channel. These take you through all the tools, editors, and how they work. Watch this space as we're always adding more videos. If you're looking for a more expansive set of game tutorials, this set of video tutorials start at beginner level using GameMaker language and then progress to intermediate. It also connects to the author's own video platform tutorials on YouTube. And this is Shawn Spaulding's platformer, which links to ours and contains a further 27 videos on YouTube. We have a new education materials that we have just released. This is a more detailed GML-based game design tutorial for artists and people starting to learn game design at college or university, where you are guided on how to make a game called Little Town, an adventure playing game created by university lecturer and game designer Ben Rivers. Ben teaches game design Faculty of Design at OCAD in Ontario. These materials include a detailed booklet and video tutorials, which students can use to make the game in 8 one-hour lessons. There are about 9 hours of video. We also provide guidance for educators on how to teach it and how to evaluate progress. Little Town will utilize more advanced functionality within GameMaker, including our sequences animation functionality. All licenses provided have access to sequences. For older students aged 16 plus, there is also the facility for them to engage with our community for help with their projects using our forum, the GameMaker Community Forum. We have 3 types of license available, and these can be purchased through Studica. There's Educator, which has our desktop licenses, which is Windows, Mac, and Linux. Educator Plus, which is desktop plus web, which is HTML5 export. And then Achiever, which is desktop and web, and also includes mobile, which is Android, iOS, UWP, and PlayStation 4. There are 1- and 2-year options. These seats are concurrent use licenses, so they can be used for multiple classes. GameMaker can be used on a PC and Mac, not yet on Chromebook, but due to overwhelming demand from these webinars, we have a version in development. As can be seen from our recent survey in early November, at that time, only 5% of teachers were unaffected by COVID. As a consequence, we have provided support to our users throughout COVID, currently until December 31st, 2021. All seat licenses can be used by 5 students simultaneously. So 30 seats used in a computer lab can be used simultaneously by 150 students at home. Hopefully, we won't need to extend beyond December because the world will be a safer place, but we will look at this nearer the time and reevaluate. Privacy in education is important to us. The teacher acts as a seat manager. They receive one perpetual Educator desktop seat that they can then use to investigate GameMaker and understand the setup. The seats are entirely anonymous, including the usernames and passwords, which are randomly generated, so no PII is collected. There is more information in our privacy policy and a specific section on our approach to education. We are also approved for use by educationframework.com. As a thank you for attending our webinar and making it to the end, you are eligible to receive a free teacher license. Christy will send you a link, or click the button when we send you the slides for the step-by-step setup. And now, has anyone got any questions?
Sure, let me just check for a moment. Are students allowed to download GameMaker without creating an account?
Yeah, that's a good question. Students, you can go to the education page on our website. So students can download GameMaker from there and then use the username and seat password that's created by the educator.
Okay, perfect. And then can the seats also be used for after school activities?
Yeah, certainly. If you've bought say like 30 licenses for your computer lab and then you're using that for after school clubs and the like, then that's fine. Yeah, they can be used for all sorts of things.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up questions.
Okay, cool. So I'll hand over to you, Christy, just go through the final slide.
Great, thank you, Stuart. If anyone has any questions about GameMaker or is looking for a quote, please feel free to contact Studica. You can reach us by email at info@studica.com or call 888-561-7521. And again, I will be sending a recording of this webinar and also a link to the PDF that will have all the clickable information for you. So thank you everyone for joining us today and have a great day.